Hi, everyone. I'm UB Ventura. I'm a product manager and trainer at Connect Our Kids. Cliff Venable is an expert search agent with SenecaSearch, which is part of the National Institute for Permanent Family Connectedness at Seneca Family of Agencies. NIPFC believes that every child has a family, and family members can be found when we try. Cliff has more than 15 years of experience doing family finding and has conducted tens of thousands of relative searches. He is here today to talk about how social workers can leverage social media to find relatives and connections for children in foster care. Cliff, thank you so much for joining us to share your expertise.
Thanks, UB. I'm happy to be here.
The Connector Kids People Search tool is a search engine for discovering contact information and relationships. The results are public information from over 300 sources and covers over 3 billion people. Those results include social media results. So, Cliff, based on your experience at SenecaSearch, how can social workers best use social media results to find other connections?
Well, I think the first step is deciding which social platform to use, and we primarily use Facebook. It's the one that is going to have the information that you're looking for, relatives and associates and other potential connections. So that's the primary one we use. The other thing I would say is to gather as much information ahead of time as you can for the case, instead of just going directly to searching mom or dad. So you can do that through either case mining or interviewing relatives. You can also do that using a people search program like Connect Our Kids, which is free, or you can use some of the paid services like Accurate or Clear or our service. Then when you actually begin doing the searching, in Facebook, there's really only a few ways to search. You can search by name, city, and state. You can't use the social or the date of birth or previous address. So you want to begin. I like to start searching the name only if it's an uncommon name, because then you can sort of scroll through and see the potential matches, and it doesn't disqualify people who didn't put in their city or state. If the name's a little less common, I like to put in the name and state. And then the names that are really common and you're getting a lot of hits, you can actually narrow it down to name and city.
Yes, that's great. Great information. On social media, some people use their legal name, others use a maiden name, and others aliases. So, how do you determine if you found the right person?
There's really primarily four ways to make sure that you found the right person. You can do it by name, and so that's why it's good, again, to do that preliminary search, particularly for women if they have a married and maiden name. You can search either one of those. A little trick that I do is I typically want to, if I have the married and maiden name, I'm going to search the least common of those names because you're more likely to get a hit. And some women will use their maiden name and their married name, and particularly in Facebook, a lot of women will use their married and maiden name. So you can use that kind of combination to narrow it down to try to find the right person. Another thing is age. So if you did the preliminary search and you have the person's date of birth, some people will actually put the date of birth on their profile. So that's a way to confirm it. You can also, some people will put when they graduated high school. So you can go do, most people graduate when they're 18. So if you do the reverse math, you can figure out the age. And then also with timelines, people will often get birthday greetings and timelines. So from that, if it's around the date of birth that you have for the person, is probably the right person. The other way to see if it's the right person is by location. And again, that's why it's good to do that preliminary search. Sometimes with people search reports, you can see where they're from and where they're currently living. And in Facebook, people will often have where they're from and where they're currently living. So that's a way to sort of zero in on the right person. And then the other way you can confirm it's the right person is by association. So again, running that preliminary report. And if you have a list of possible relatives and associates, if the people on the report are also on the person's profile, if you dig into it and look at their friends section, that's another way to confirm that that's likely the right person.
Once you're certain that you have the correct social media profile for a family member, how do you use that information contained within that profile to look for other potential relatives or connections?
Well, there's a number of ways you can find potential relatives on a profile. The most obvious one is the About section on the profile, and it often will list the actual relatives, their names, their association. So that's probably the most common one. The other option is looking in the Friends section for someone with the same last name. And again, that's why it's important to do that preliminary search, particularly for women when you have a married and maiden name. So search those names, and subjects with the same last name listed as friends are very often relatives. Another way you can search is through their timeline. People will often comment on the timeline and sometimes refer to themselves as mom, dad, sister, brother, etc. Photographs are important, either photo tags or comments that people make on those photographs. Those very often are relatives.
So, those are all really great suggestions for social workers who are trying to find extended family and connections. Do you have any other tips and tricks that you want to share when it comes to using social media for family finding?
Sure. One trick you can do is to look for multiple profiles for a person. So often someone may have more than one. And so one profile has little information on it and no relatives. And then another profile may have the whole list of relatives on it. So when you find that one match, it can be sometimes helpful to, if there's nothing on it, to dig in and look for an additional profile. Another thing that can be important to do is look for that relative on the person's profile that's sort of like the main Facebook person. And I find this over and over again. There's almost always one relative who is the main Facebook person who has every other relative on their profile. So by digging in and finding that particular relative, it can lead you to that sort of treasure trove of additional relatives. And the other thing I would say is look for the paternal relatives on the maternal relatives profiles and vice versa. So what happens very often is um, mom and dad are not friends on Facebook, but maternal grandmother and paternal grandmother are friends on Facebook. So often looking in those profiles, so maybe the dad is not on the mom's profile, but the dad's sister is on the profile. So looking for those either maternal or paternal relatives on the opposite, spouses or parents' profile can be super helpful, and you can often find that other side of the family. And then a lot of times, particularly with dads, if you have very, very little information on dad, looking at mom's profile, it's fairly common for dad's information to be on there, or his relatives will be on there.
Yeah. So, Cliff, thank you so much for taking the time to share your family finding tips. We have an entire video series planned around your expert knowledge, so we look forward to learning more from you next time.
Thanks so much.
You can learn more about SenecaSearch at www.familypermanency.org under SenecaSearch services. Or you can contact Cliff directly at cliff_venable@senecacenter.org. You can also request a SenecaSearch within Family Connections by navigating to the Search tab of the person you would like to search. Please note this is a paid service. Connect Our Kids has worked with SenecaSearch to ensure that SenecaSearch results are easily importable into Family Connections, so any new connections identified through this search can be easily added to a case or workspace.